Joining me right now is former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon here in the studio. Steve, it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So here we are with an incredible backdrop on the economy. China is phase one, USMCA passing, and yet just as the president is signing that phase one, Nancy Pelosi signing the articles of impeachment. Set the stage for us.
Well, look, 100 years from now, what they're going to remember is not this false solemnity you saw yesterday in the United States Senate. What they're going to understand is that this is the beginning of the end of managed decline of the United States. Signing USMCA in China in 24 hours, historic. Somebody that brought the country together. Look at the vote in the Senate yesterday. It was 89-10 on USMCA. Trump has brought the country together on the economy. And all the mainstream media, all the opposition party media, all they talk about is impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. Now they've got this kind of, it's devolved into a farce. And the farce is having Parnas up there, this obvious promoter, right, who's just obviously making stuff up. The foreign minister in the Ukraine said he's a stone-cold liar. Zelensky obviously doesn't know anything what he's talking, what Parnas is talking about.
So this explaining who Parnas is, because he was in jail. He was.
Well, he's indicted. He's indicted now, and he's trying to get, obviously get work with the DOJ and the U.S. attorney to get a lighter sentence because of this. It's shocking that the mainstream media is beatifying this guy. He's even Jake Tapper said yesterday they're treating him like Theodore Roosevelt. Here's a guy that's trying to. I mean, this has now gotten to be absurd. Nancy Pelosi obviously slow-walked this impeachment, the article's over because they were waiting for Parnas's material to come in and also for this GAO report because she didn't have a crime and she had no evidence. I think what has to happen, I think MSNBC, I think Phil Griffin, Rachel Maddow, all of them ought to be an investigation of how, because she admitted the other night.
She said she's been working on this for months and months and months.
On Lawrence O'Donnell's show, she admitted she'd been working on this for months and months and months. We ought to have a full investigation, and Pelosi and Schiff ought to be very open for how long they've been working on this to try to drop this farce. And to me, this is now getting to be kind of a comic theater. And that's why I think I've advocated for a long time for this to be a long trial and to get a lot of witnesses for the president to get it all up in the, what Comey, what Bannon, what the whistleblower, what all these guys did. But I got to tell you, it's so embarrassing now and so humiliating what the Democrats are doing. I actually think they ought to maybe even dismiss this as just being a joke. If Lev Parnas, Saint Lev Parnas, if that's the best they've got, this thing is a complete farce.
Well, I mean, when you look at the constant coming up with more dirt and trying to find dirt on President Trump, I just think that the markets would not be at 29,000 if anybody really believed that there was anything there.
It's the signal and the noise. The signal is just the noise is just what the Democrats are doing. The signal is Trump is USMCA and the China deal. He has completely restructured our trading patterns. He's made with USMCA North America and Mexico a geostrategic manufacturing alternative to East Asia. And in China, what he's done most significantly, besides proving tariffs work and proving that protectionism works, is he's put the Chinese on notice to the world. He's giving them a chance to live up to an agreement. Finally, after they stiffed us on the agreement they signed with President Obama in the Rose Garden, they lied about the Paris Accord. He's giving the Chinese Communist Party, he's giving them an opportunity to prove throughout the world that they can live up to this. And remember, in this deal, he is judge, jury, and executioner on the ability to snap back tariffs as he thinks that they're not performing. So I think this is very important. And this is where the markets look. The stock market's up, the dollar's strong because the whole world wants in on the action that Donald Trump has created in this country and the economy.
And they want fairness. And if they've seen a process in the House that was sort of making up the rules as you go along. Another thing is that the critics of the president refuse to acknowledge the wrongdoing that took place in 2016. The fact that this president was framed and was spied on as candidate Trump and then again as President Trump.
Look, if they want a trial and witnesses, let them have Bolton and Lev Parnas. If that's what they want, let them, and throw in Mulvaney too, and all the emails from OMB. Let us have the whistleblower. Let us have Brennan. Let us have Comey. Let us have Joe Biden. Let's have both sides have their witnesses. I will take our witnesses to prove from the beginning this was a nullification project on a presidency that was disrupting things for the good of the American working people and the American middle class. Let the nation see, because remember, to me, the Senate is not the jury. The American people are the jury, and the world is the audience. They are going to watch in the streets of Tehran, in Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and Beijing. They're going to be watching what happens here. I think we need to get it all on the table. If it's all on the table, the Democrats are going to get smoked.
Yeah, which is why we are looking at a market that's at all-time highs. If people thought that policy were going to change, if the president was actually going to get, touched by this, it wouldn't be the case. Vice President Mike Pence out with a new op-ed in the Journal today is saying this: a partisan impeachment, a profile in courage. He equates the John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award to a Democratic senator breaking with the party, voting against impeachment. He writes this: the true profile in courage, as Kennedy understood it, would be a Senate Democrat willing to stand up and reject a partisan impeachment passed by the Democrat-controlled House. The question naturally arises: who among the Senate Democrats will stand up to the passions of their party this time? Who will stand up against legislative mob rule and for the rule of law? Who will be the 2020 profile in courage?
Well, I tell you who our profile in courage is Donald J. Trump. For him to stand up for everything that they've thrown at him every day. It's so sick. Yesterday, when USMCA in China in the last 24 hours and almost gets no mainstream media coverage, and Lev Parnas gets hours of prime time, that shows you how ridiculously biased this is. 100 years from now, people, when their grandchildren and great-grandchildren look at this, they're going to see this was the reversing of a managed decline of America's elite by Donald Trump, who stood up when they all mocked and ridiculed him on economic orthodoxy, and he said, no, this is the way we're going to go, and this is going to work. That, to me, is a profile in courage. He laid it all on the line, and here's what they've done. They've tried to smear him with this impeachment process, and if President Trump ought to fire back and fight as hard as he's ever fought, not roll over with what some of these Senate Republicans want to do, but he ought to fight. He ought to demand witnesses. He ought to demand his witnesses.
Meanwhile, don't forget that 4 of those senators who are supposed to be the jury, supposed to be the independents on trial, are running for president. So you've got Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders and Bennett and Elizabeth Warren going to be the jury. I mean,
they're recuse themselves.
You can't make this stuff up.
They ought to go back to the witness protection program, which is the Democratic primary right now. Yeah. I mean, that's another farce.
I want to get your take on the Democratic lineup on that stage. Bloomberg has spent more than $217 million. $217 million so far in the 2020 race, betting that markets favor the mayor to defeat President Trump, but researchers believe he only has a 10% chance to win the Democratic nomination. Assess the field. How important has the Bloomberg situation been? Well,
Bloomberg, as I said, over the last year, he's going to be a disruptor. Number one, just in the primary itself, he's not going to be the Democratic nominee, but he's going to drop a financial nuclear bomb on the Democratic primary on Super Tuesday. He's already got a massive organization in the field. I think his organizational capabilities right now are bigger than all the candidates combined. Plus, he's got a technology system as sophisticated as the Trump campaign. Brad Parscale and the team over Trump have the most sophisticated ever. Bloomberg's almost at that quality with his data operation. Plus, remember, with Bloomberg, it's not money. We think of politics as donors and just raising cash for television ads. Michael Bloomberg is applied capital. He's talking about, even if he's not the nominee, a $1 billion capital investment in back of defeating Donald Trump. To me, this has to be taken very seriously. He's an oligarch, okay? And now you're seeing the oligarchs actually get involved in American politics. And I think President Trump ought to focus on this. I think he ought to start calling it out. Bloomberg is, I think, the disruptor in this election. I've said from day one, not as a candidate. I think he's looking at something bigger, a takeover of the Democratic Party, almost where he's prime minister. And I think he's looking for that vehicle, whether that vehicle end up be Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden, that vehicle that actually let him take control. And I think President Trump and the guys of the campaign got to start taking this very, very seriously, because I think Bloomberg's serious.
Elizabeth Warren is taking him seriously. She doesn't want him anywhere near the election because of the money that he spent. He spent that $100 million in November, and he was effective in terms of helping the House win the majority.
Donald Trump would not be impeached today if it's not for Michael Bloomberg. Nobody connects that dots. It was his $100 million and back of Pelosi's, auditioned, curated candidates that never talked about impeachment. It was his $100 million. I think they focused on 25 races. They won 23. He's applied money. At the NRA, his ground game, I think it was Everytown USA, really went a long way to destroying the NRA. Michael Bloomberg knows how to apply capital to situations, and he is a very serious individual. He's got a personal vendetta against President Trump. I think he hates President Trump. People got to start taking this seriously. They mocked and ridiculed me when I first started talking about this. This amount of money, remember, the $1 billion is just a start.
Yeah.
He has $50 billion, and he can apply as much as he wants to this race. He's got to be people must take him seriously.
He did it for his run in New York City in 2001.
$300 million in the third run.
The Wall Street Journal writes, it's the game plan the billionaire used in his campaign for mayor when he outspent his competitor nearly 5-1. But is that all it is? Look, we don't know what his priorities are other than the climate and guns and the environment. We don't know. He said he has a jobs plan. I still don't know what that jobs plan is. So is that all it is? Can you just dump a lot of money and become a factor without actually having a policy that resonates with people?
Well, I think he's going to come up. Look, he's going to buy as many policy experts as he has to. Remember, it's the convergence of organization, technology, and capital that is going to change this. And I think he's driving to this point. He will come up. Look, he's not going to be president of the United States. He's not going to be the Democratic nominee. But it's his capital and his operation, his apparatus that's going to have a major impact in this. And that's why I think that President Trump and the team have got to start getting focused on where's Bloomberg and where's Bloomberg applying this capital.
Because he's not a progressive the way a Sanders or a Warren are, and that's not going to be good enough for Tom Perez running the Democratic Party.
Maria, he was a moderate to liberal Republican in his first 2 terms as mayor. He only shifted over to become an independent because he realized he was going to go to the Democratic Party, but he only flipped because of his hatred for Donald Trump. This is all about a personal vendetta. His policies will be whatever policy he has to remove Donald Trump from office. That's why it has to be taken seriously.
Let me ask you
if the Democrats they're not going to succeed on impeachment. They're trying to smear Trump.
Yep.
But it's Bloomberg's capital coming in back of that they hope to thwart the Trump revolution that's working for working class and middle class people.
CNN released audio from Tuesday's debate when Senator Elizabeth Warren confronted Senator Bernie Sanders about denying her claim that he told her a woman could not be president. Let's watch it.
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
What?
I think you called me a liar on national TV.
Let's not do it right now. You want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion. You called me. You told me. All right, let's not do it now.
I don't want to get in the middle of it. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Tom Steyer just wanted to say hi. Your reaction to that?
Well, the debate the other night was like the Night of the Living Dead meets Pleasantville. Okay, it's a bunch of stiffs, right? People on that stage are not going to defeat Donald Trump. And to me, Bernie Sanders and these people, the hot mic is the big event of the debate. You know why? Because they're not going after each other. They're not challenging. I'm tired of the populist left. AOC better get focused and get Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren to start going after Joe Biden on his corruption and incompetence. Joe Biden, middle-class Joe, has supported every trade deal and every piece of legislation that has hurt working-class people, middle-class people, and you never hear that on that stage. Also, in a world where geopolitics is everything right now, what President Trump has done with China and Tehran in the world, okay, you see on the streets of Hong Kong and Taiwan and Beirut and Tehran, they're supporting President Trump for the rule of law and capitalism, and you hear this debate, and it's like something in the 7th grade. It's ridiculous, and this is the media has the fix in. They're not holding these people accountable, and if they think that's going to beat Trump in November, I got another thing for them. Donald Trump's going to bring the heat, and what you see on that stage has no chance of beating Donald Trump.
But I think that's the point, and that's the point in some of the reasoning behind the impeachment trial.
Absolutely.
They know they cannot beat him. They're looking at the landscape, and he's going to win again. Look at the markets at 29,000. I said it the other day. If anybody felt like, he was going to get taken down and his policies were going to get changed, we wouldn't have this, and this market like this. And if he were to get taken down, I think there would be anarchy. I think there would be upset in the streets, people protesting just because of the fairness element, not about Trump, but that it's just not a fair process.
The reason that's not going to happen is people understand what's going on here, okay? They understand what he's been doing, and everybody's been pushing back and said, oh, we're going to have a massive recession, the stock market's going to collapse, all this is going to happen. That's why it's a profile in courage. He's done this against Wall Street, against all the intellectual academics in academia, the PhDs in economics. He's done it against everybody. He's fought deliberately delivered. Remember, the biggest problem he's got is a dollar that's overvalued. You know why? The world votes every day on Donald Trump's economy, and they want in. That's why the dollar's so strong. So to me, that's what he's going against the established order.
Yeah.
And what he has proven is that his disruption is working. In the history, the fullness of time, people are going to realize he brought the country together.
All right, Steve, it's great to have you. Thanks so much. Amazing insight.